In the spring of 1509, England crowned a young man who seemed destined for greatness. Prince Henry, second son of Henry VII, ascended the throne at just 17, tall, athletic, golden-haired, and brimming with life. He was everything a king should be, charming, learned, and beloved. The court rejoiced. Music filled the halls of Westminster as banners unfurled and the scent of fresh flowers drifted through the streets. To his people, Henry was no mere monarch. He was a symbol of rebirth after years of civil war. At his side stood his new bride, Catherine of Aragon, the daughter of Spain's most powerful monarchs. Their marriage was more than love. It was a union of nations. Together, they promised a future of strength and faith. But behind the splendor of the crown lay a quiet, unspoken burden. For Henry, the duty of kingship was not simply to rule. It was to secure a son, an heir who would protect the Tudor line from the ghosts of war that haunted England still, as the bells rang across London. No one could foresee that this bright young king, handsome, cultured, adored, would one day be remembered not for peace or prosperity, but for the wives he would wed and the faith he would break. Catherine was everything a queen could be: dignified, devout, and utterly loyal. Yet she stood beside Henry through it all. She endured miscarriages, loss, and heartbreak. In 1516, she bore a daughter, Princess Mary, a triumph of survival, but not the son Henry longed for. Years passed. The young king, once radiant with promise, grew restless. He saw his wife aging while he remained vigorous and strong. He began to question whether their marriage was cursed, perhaps, he thought, because she had once been his brother's widow. In 1527, Henry sought an annulment, not out of cruelty, but out of conviction that God denied him an heir. Yet the Pope refused. The church that had crowned him now stood between him and his desire. A desire not only for a son, but for Anne Boleyn, a lady of wit and beauty who would soon change England forever. Catherine's pleas were noble, her faith unbroken. She would die still calling herself the true Queen of England, abandoned, but unbowed. Anne Boleyn was unlike any woman Henry had known, clever, elegant, dangerous. She refused to be his mistress. She demanded to be his wife. For her, Henry defied the might of Rome. He tore England from the Catholic Church, declaring himself supreme head of the new Church of England. The monasteries trembled, priests fled, and the Pope's power over England was gone forever. In 1533, Henry and Anne were wed in secret. Soon after, she was crowned queen, radiant in gold, adored by some, despised by many. When she gave birth, the child was not a son, but a daughter, Elizabeth. Henry's disappointment was sharp, but his love endured. For a time, whispers grew at court, of arrogance, of witchcraft, of betrayal. When Anne failed to give him a son, her enemies closed in. In 1536, accused of adultery and treason, she was taken to the Tower of London. There, on a May morning, she knelt before the sword of the executioner. Her last words were of mercy. Henry, it was said, played music the night she died. Within weeks, the court saw a new face, Jane Seymour, quiet and modest, everything and was not. Henry called her his true love. In 1537, she gave him the gift he had sought for nearly 3 decades, a son, Prince Edward. Bells rang across the kingdom. Henry wept with joy. But happiness came with a price. Days after the birth, Jane fell ill and died. The court fell silent. For once, the mighty Henry showed sorrow. He ordered her buried beside him at Windsor, and there, years later, his own tomb would lie beside hers. For all his power and all his wives, Jane Seymour alone would be remembered as the one he truly loved. As Europe trembled between Catholic and Protestant power, Henry sought another alliance. His advisors arranged a marriage with Anne of Cleves, a German princess. Her portrait, painted by Hans Holbein, showed a gentle, handsome woman, but when Anne arrived in England, Henry recoiled. "She is nothing like her picture," he whispered. The marriage was a disaster. Within months, it was annulled, though unwisely accepted her fate. She lived comfortably as the king's beloved sister, avoiding the fates that claimed others. Henry's pride was wounded, but his thirst for love had not yet dimmed. Then came Catherine Howard, young, lively, and foolishly unguarded. Barely 20, she brought warmth back to the aging king's heart. He called her his rose without thorns, but court life was cruel. Old lovers resurfaced. Rumors spread. Within 2 years, evidence of adultery reached the king's ears. Henry's fury was swift and merciless. In 1542, Catherine Howard faced execution at the Tower. On the morning of her death, witnesses said she asked for the block to be brought to her, so she could practice kneeling. Her final words, "I die a queen, though I would rather have been a good woman." At last came Catherine Parr, intelligent, kind, and wise. She was twice widowed and had no illusions about the king she married. Yet she soothed his temper, guided his children, and helped restore Princess Mary and Elizabeth to favour. She was a reformer, quietly shaping the early Protestant faith. Henry, ailing and heavy, relied on her comfort in his final years. For once, peace seemed to settle upon the Tudor court. Catherine Parr survived the king, and with her, the story of Henry's 6 queens came to an end. On a cold January night in 1547, King Henry VIII died, a man both feared and adored, who had reshaped not only England, but the very soul of its faith. He left behind 3 children, Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth, and the kingdom forever changed. The church he founded endures to this day. The palaces he built still whisper his name, and the women he loved and lost remain eternal figures in the tapestry of British history. In the end, Henry's greatest monument was not the throne he ruled, nor the churches he built, but the story he left behind, a story of love, faith, power, and the cost of desire.